I would first like to introduce Mr. Tawanda Mutasah. He is currently the International Director of Programs at the Open Society Foundations, which used to be until recently Open Society Institute OSI in New York City. And he was formerly chair of OSF's Africa Advisory Board. He previously directed the Open Society Initiative for Southern Africa, where Mary Jane, I believe, the two of you collaborated. And he has, amongst others, many other identities, also works on the Oxfam Great Britain's international advocacy staff. Beyond that, he's been a very, looks like very ardent activist in Zimbabwe, his home country, as a pro-democracy organizer and human rights defender, and he has certainly experienced the negative impacts on his own personal life of that identity, as well as on how difficult those activities are in current day Zimbabwe. I will just mention furthermore that he was admitted to the Zimbabwe bar in 1995. He's a recipient of the International Rule of Law Award, and he holds degrees from the University of Witwatersrand in South Africa, as well as the Harvard Law School and the University of Zimbabwe, so an extremely accomplished career. And we have a second person with a very accomplished career, and that is Mary Jane Ncube. She has 10 years of working as a specialist in anti-corruption and governance. She is currently the Executive Director of Transparency International in Zimbabwe. She has extensive experience working with governments, local authorities, and parliaments in Southern and East Africa. And she is currently here at Maxwell as a Humphrey Fellow through the Executive Education Program. This was Mary Jane's idea, so I'm going to give it over to you. Do you want to introduce the main topic, or do you want me to do it? It's up to you.
I can do it.
Then you take it over.
Thank you everybody for joining us. The topic this afternoon is the role of international NGOs. I know that Tosca prefers transnational NGOs, but I found myself more comfortable with international NGOs.
That's fine.
And we have collaborated with Tawanda on what we should call the topic, and the topic is, do they play a big brother or a collaborative role with the NGOs in the Global South? And I've used, fortunately, my own organization, Transparency International, as a case study in this topic, so that I will not offend any other international NGO but my own. And I'm glad that my own managing director is not here. I'm sure he will not be very amused by some of my views. But I'm speaking from the point of view of someone who sits in the Global South, running what is essentially a national NGO, and what we view as the relationship with international NGOs. The context of the paper really is that there is a need to redefine and reform the role of international NGOs in the Global South, especially in the face of dwindling foreign aid and emerging forms of development possibilities which have been proven can be run by national NGOs. So, because of time, I'll cut out the issues of why do NGOs exist and what do they do. I think we can all agree that essentially national NGOs and international NGOs are after the same goals. We all seek to fill the gaps in economic, social, and political spheres where government cannot come in, or where governments are either are not able or they are repressive to certain groups of society. Civil society and NGOs can come in. And as such, if they do play the same role, what is the angle that, or what is the view that donors should take when they make decisions about who to fund on similar projects? Because there are many instances where international NGOs and local NGOs are doing same activities, same interventions, and competing for the same pot of funds. So using transparency as a case study, we're going to look at the approaches, methodologies, tools, and capacity issues. We will then look at the human capital issue, the funding, environment, and the social capital issues. Transparency International is a 19-year-old anti-corruption global movement. It is attributed with placing the fight against corruption on the global agenda. I'm using it as an example because it provides the quintessential example of an NGO that plays both the role of big brother and collaborator. And I think as I go through the paper, you will see what I mean. In 2009 to 2010, we started a process at a global level as a movement to develop our new strategic plan for the year 2011 to 2016. And during that process, we were trying to redefine the relationship. More importantly, the leadership in Transparency International was trying to redefine the relationship between what we don't call it headquarters, we call it the Secretariat, and it's based in Berlin, in Germany. They were trying to redefine that relationship between the Secretariat and the chapters. Country offices are called chapters. The question of how we should relate to each other, how we should collaborate, how we should partner, has been something that has been contentious in the movement throughout its history. And during this whole process of defining the strategy, we went through a confusing labyrinth of what are called the global vision and global priorities, regional themes, regional priorities against the national themes and priorities. The idea in defining these themes and these priorities is that as a membership, as a movement or a family of TI, we should start with national level priorities, which should feed into regional priorities and then eventually feed to global priorities. But in planning these priorities, it doesn't often work like that because global priorities are usually articulated by what is happening in the world. And what is happening in the world is usually defined by what are the geopolitical issues of importance in the world. So at the time of planning our strategic plan in the summer of 2010 last year, when we came to the level of the regional, our regional plans tended to be subordinated by the global priorities because there was the issue of the climate conference that had just happened in Copenhagen. There was the issue of the financial crisis, and this is where the leadership wanted us to focus our priorities. But this disadvantages us as the national chapters because much as we are not concerned or not unaware of the climate change issues and the financial crisis issues, we also have priorities at a national level and at a regional level that may not be perceived as geopolitically important to run with as themes or to run with as global priorities for the movement. So this has an impact in the way we plan. It has an impact in how we align our resources and also how we actually fundraise in the first place. There's also an added extra confusion that at international level the Secretariat is discussing and mobilizing funds directly with big business and with headquarters of various donors, while we have to deal with country officers. You will find, for example, that the conversation that USAID is having in Germany is not the same conversation they will have in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, in South Korea, in Colombia. And there is no way of collating that information and making sure that we're all having the same conversation. So we have challenges that the Secretariat doesn't have in terms of fundraising that have to do with they're having more capacity to have these conversations at an elevated level that national chapters do not have. And one of those reasons that I identified have to do with one, location. By being in the global north, the Secretariat already has an advantage that the chapters do not have. I've already mentioned that they have direct access to donors, but they also have direct access to information technology, to academic researchers, to think tanks, to research institutions that we in the global south don't have as small NGOs. So when they develop interventions, they develop fundraising proposals, they have access to all that information that we don't have. They can dedicate a whole division, a whole unit to do baseline studies, to do feasibility studies that we don't have resources to do. So already they go into the fundraising arena at a better advantage, and at the same time we're all looking to fulfill the same mandate. We're all looking to fulfill the same priorities. And sometimes the disparities are so absurd that it's hard for people to even relate that this chapter is actually the same family of Transparency International that we interact with in Europe, when we are in the United Kingdom, when we are in Finland, when we are in Germany, because of the disparities between the global south and the global north. Then you'll find that chapters in the global north and the Secretariat can collaborate on so many more levels because they have the same capacity in terms of the human capital that they engage, in terms of the resources that they can engage, and the issues that they can debate on. It's not only access to information, but also ideologically they relate. They have experienced, for example, if we talk about the United States, we talk about Australia, New Zealand, most members of the EC, they all have something in common. They relate to issues like defense from the same angle. They relate to issues like climate change from the same angle. And also, these are people who are represented in our international board. They will have the same mindset. They're coming from similar backgrounds. They relate on so many levels. So already you have that social capital that they have that we don't have in the global south. And it causes a frustration on the part of the global south, because then when we have annual members meetings and we talk about our frustrations in fundraising and our inability to enter certain arenas and thematic areas that are important to us, extractive industries and so on, the solution is to bring in someone from the Secretariat to strengthen your capacity, in the sense that they will run that project. There will be a secondment to your chapter. It's a disadvantage in the sense that it doesn't build the capacity we need. It's a disadvantage in the sense that it doesn't improve our ability to fundraise, because when we have conversations with donors at our level, they still don't see the capacity. That person was a secondment. They have come and they have gone. And at the same time, it's a disadvantage because the knowledge is not being transferred at local level. it's knowledge that the seconded person comes